The night the Empire was born didn't look like the beginning of anything. It looked like the end. A fire ripped through the crumbling remains of the Pine Ridge Juvenile Detention Center. Flames licked the night sky. Windows shattered, and smoke poured into the cold November air. When firefighters finally broke through the rubble, they expected to find nothing but charred stone and ash. Instead, they found something far worse. Before we continue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting tales. In one of the collapsed wings, near the old dormitory block, lay 3 bodies. 2 guards, 1 teenage boy. But when the coroner's reports came back, it revealed something chilling. The boy hadn't died in the fire. He'd been murdered, and his name was Adrian Cole. Pine Ridge sat on the edge of Millhaven, a declining industrial town in the Midwest. Once known for steel and manufacturing, Millhaven had become a ghost of itself. Shuttered factories, unemployment lines, and neighborhoods hollowed out by poverty and crime. Adrian Cole was a product of that system. Born in 1997, he grew up in a crumbling housing project with a mother addicted to painkillers and a father who had vanished before he was old enough to remember his face. Teachers remembered Adrian as sharp but angry. He had a quick wit, a love for books, and an eye for numbers. But he also had a short fuse. By 15, he'd been arrested twice. First for shoplifting, then for breaking into a liquor store with 2 older boys. The court called him a danger to himself and others. He was shipped off to Pine Ridge Juvenile Detention Center, a place that billed itself as rehabilitation but was, in truth, a warehouse for forgotten kids. Life at Pine Ridge was brutal, overcrowded, understaffed, with guards who ruled through intimidation. Adrian kept his head down, or tried to, but in a world where weakness was currency, he quickly became a target. Still, Adrian fought back. He earned a reputation for resilience. That kid, one counsel would later say, wasn't going to break. He'd build something out of the ashes, if he had to. No one knew how literal those words would become. November 14, 2014. At 11:47 p.m., alarms blared through Pine Ridge. The fire started in the old kitchen wing, but spread rapidly through broken sprinklers and flammable insulation. Chaos erupted. Guards scrambled to get kids out of locked dorms. By the time firefighters arrived, the roof of Dormitory C had collapsed. Most of the boys made it out. Adrian did not. His body was found in the hallway, near the exit, as if he had almost escaped. But autopsy reports showed he'd been strangled before the fire reached him. His ribs were broken. Bruises lined his arms. Whoever killed him had left him to burn. At first, investigators assumed the guards had lost track of him during evacuation. But when details leaked that Adrian had been killed before the flames consumed him, the case shifted. This was no accident. This was murder. Detective Maya Alvarez, a tough, meticulous investigator from Millhaven PD, was assigned to the case. From the start, she faced resistance. Pine Ridge officials wanted to bury the scandal. Local politicians feared exposure. Still, Alvarez pressed forward. First clue, security cameras had been disabled the night of the fire. Someone had pulled the wires hours before the blaze started. Second clue, witnesses reported seeing 2 guards dragging the boy down the hall just minutes before the fire alarm sounded. Third clue, Adrian's cellmate, a quiet kid named Terrence, claimed Adrian had been threatened days earlier. They told him to shut his mouth. Terrence whispered. Shut his mouth about what? Alvarez's early suspects included the guards, 2 officers with histories of excessive force. They denied involvement, claiming they'd been helping evacuate. No solid evidence tied them. The inmates. Rumors spread that Adrian had been in a fight with older boys. Some said he owed debts. But most of the kids insisted Adrian had been different, respected, even protected. The arson angle. Fire marshals discovered accelerants in the kitchen wing. Someone had set the blaze intentionally. Was Adrian silenced because he knew who? Every lead tangled into another. Millhaven buzzed with speculation. Parents of other detainees demanded answers. Politicians called for reform. But whispers in back alleys painted a darker picture. Pine Ridge wasn't just a detention center. It was a hub for drugs, contraband, and payoffs. And Adrian? He had seen too much. Alvarez dug deeper into Adrian's file. Teacher's notes revealed he had excelled in math. He had even won a statewide essay contest at 13, writing about corruption in small-town governments. Inside Pine Ridge, Adrian had begun tutoring other boys in GED prep. He wanted out. His counselor testified. He wanted more than this place, but he wasn't afraid to speak the truth. One chilling detail emerged. Weeks before his death, Adrian had written letters never mailed, describing guards taking cuts from contraband smuggling. He mentioned a network. He signed one note with a chilling line: "When the system fails you, you build your own." Months passed with no arrests. Alvarez grew frustrated, but then a tip broke the case open. An ex-guard came forward, anonymously at first, then on record. He claimed Pine Ridge supervisors had been running a smuggling operation, drugs, cigarettes, even weapons, through the detention center. Guards who stayed quiet got bonuses. Kids who resisted got punished. And Adrian? He had pieced it together. He'd even threatened to expose them. That boy was too smart for his own good, the ex-guard said. He figured out the whole system. The fire, Alvarez realized, hadn't been a tragedy. It had been a cover-up. Adrian wasn't just murdered. He was silenced. News of the smuggling ring shattered Millhaven. Parents protested outside Pine Ridge. Reporters swarmed the town. For the first time, Adrian's face appeared on national news. Not as a delinquent, but as a victim of systemic abuse. Helen Johnson, Adrian's old English teacher, sobbed during an interview. They called him a criminal, but he was just a boy the system didn't know what to do with. And when he fought back, they killed him. Just as Alvarez prepared to make arrests, everything stalled. The ex-guard who testified disappeared. Evidence logs from the fire mysteriously went missing. Political pressure mounted on Alvarez to close the case. But Alvarez refused. She traced financial records, linking Pine Ridge administrators to offshore accounts, bribes, payoffs, even campaign donations. This wasn't just local corruption. It was a chain stretching far beyond Millhaven. And Adrian had been the loose thread. In 2016, 2 guards were indicted for conspiracy and manslaughter. Pine Ridge was shut down. State officials promised reform. But for Detective Alvarez, the resolution felt hollow. Adrian's death had sparked outrage, but the deeper network, the empire of smuggling and corruption, remained intact. And in a haunting twist, whispers began circulating in Millhaven. Adrian hadn't died in vain. Other boys who had once been under his wing, the ones he'd mentored in math and planning, had begun organizing. Not gangs, not petty crime, something bigger. A new network, a shadow system, one that claimed to be built on Adrian's vision. When the system failed him, one former Pine Ridge inmate said, he showed us how to build our own empire. 2 years later, Millhaven police raided a warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, they found weapons, counterfeit money presses, and ledgers filled with coded transactions. Scrawled across the wall, in black marker, were 5 words. This is Adrian's empire. The empire was real, and it was growing. January 2018, when Millhaven police stormed a warehouse on the outskirts of town, they expected to find a low-level gang operation. Instead, they uncovered a blueprint for something far more structured. Crates of weapons, stacks of counterfeit bills, ledgers filled with coded entries, transactions marked with numbers, names, and dates. And on the far wall, in bold black letters, this is Adrian's empire. For detectives, the message was taunt and prophecy all at once. Adrian Cole, the boy killed at Pine Ridge, had become something larger in death than he ever was in life. He had become legend. Detective Maya Alvarez, still haunted by Adrian's murder, dug into the warehouse evidence. She found familiar names scrawled in the ledgers, boys who had once been locked inside Pine Ridge with Adrian. Terrence Moore, Adrian's old cellmate, now 20, quiet but brilliant with numbers. He was suspected of running the financial side. Big D. Darnell Harris, once a 16-year-old bruiser in Pine Ridge, now rumored to lead security for the operation. Luis Ortega, who'd been caught smuggling cell phones in the detention center, now managing communications and contraband routes. These weren't just criminals. They were disciples. Kids Adrian had once tutored, organized, and inspired. One phrase kept appearing in coded notebooks. If they fail us, we build. Millhaven's reaction was split. For some, Adrian's empire was a threat, an organized criminal network rising from the ashes of Pine Ridge. But for others, it was vindication. They failed those kids, said one local activist. Now those same kids are showing they don't need the system. They're making their own. Graffiti began to appear around town. Adrian Lives. For the first time, Adrian Cole's name was spoken not with pity, but with reverence. The FBI got involved when it became clear this was no street gang. Adrian's empire operated like a corporation. Recruitment. Only former Pine Ridge boys were invited. Loyalty born in fire. Finances. Counterfeiting, cyber fraud, and laundering through small-town businesses. Community shield. Empire members donated anonymously to struggling families, paid medical bills, and even funded after-school programs. This dual nature confused investigators. Was the Empire criminal? Revolutionary? Both? Detective Alvarez admitted in an interview they blurred the line between justice and crime. For some kids, the Empire was the first time anyone told them they mattered. In 2019, a sting operation traced counterfeit bills from Millhaven to 3 neighboring states. Surveillance footage captured Terrence Moore, Adrian's cellmate, withdrawing cash from an ATM using stolen IDs. The footage showed something else chilling. Pinned to his jacket was a rook chess piece pin, the same symbol investigators had linked to Adrian's old notebooks. This wasn't coincidence. The Empire had symbols, structure, and rules, and they were growing. Inside the Empire, Adrian was no longer remembered as the murder boy who never escaped Pine Ridge. He was remembered as a prophet. Members quoted his letters, which had circulated secretly after his death. The weak break when the system presses. The strong bend it. Numbers don't lie. Build them right, and they will feed you. One voice alone is drowned. 100 voices together shake walls. For the boys who had grown into young men, Adrian was both martyr and blueprint, but psychologists who studied the group warned. Once a victim becomes myth, followers often twist his words to justify anything. Summer 2019, the Empire made its first bold move, a coordinated heist on a Millhaven armored truck. 3 masked men, armed but disciplined, intercepted the vehicle. They stole $1.8 million. The driver and guard were left tied but unharmed. The FBI noted how precise the job was. Timed to the second, no wasted movement. Almost military. And on the back door of the abandoned getaway van, investigators found one word sprayed in black paint. Failed. The message was clear. They weren't just stealing money. They were making statements. Detective Alvarez, still carrying Adrian's file in her bag, led the task force. For her, this wasn't just another case. It was personal. She had watched Adrian die in the system's shadows. Now his ghost had returned, not as a victim, but as a force. But she wrestled with conflict. Interviews with locals revealed families saved by Empire money. Kids pulled out of gangs because the Empire offered protection. They're criminals, Alvarez told the press. But the truth is complicated. They're building something the system refused to give them. Mid-investigation, Alvarez discovered something shocking. Local officials were quietly profiting from Empire operations. A councilman had accepted donations to look the other way. A bank manager had helped launder money. It was Pine Ridge all over again, authority figures enabling crime. And just like before, Adrian's name was a justification. In December 2019, FBI agents raided a supposed Empire safe house. They expected ledgers and counterfeit equipment. Instead, they found blueprints, detailed architectural plans of the Millhaven Federal Courthouse. Pinned to the wall was another phrase in black marker. The system failed us. Now we'll break it. This wasn't about money anymore. Adrian's empire was preparing for war. The blueprints of the Millhaven Federal Courthouse spread across the FBI's table like a prophecy. Hallways marked in red. entrances circled, exits blocked with X, and one chilling note written in black marker. The system failed us. Now we'll break it. For Detective Maya Alvarez, it was no longer just about crime. It was about survival. Adrian's empire wasn't planning another heist. They were preparing for an attack. Through wiretaps and informants, the FBI pieced together fragments of the plan. A coordinated courthouse raid during a high-profile sentencing. The goal, not money but spectacle, to send a message that the system was fragile. Leaders identified: Terrence Moore, strategist; Darnell Big D Harris, enforcer; Luis Ortega, logistics. But the deeper investigators dug, the more they realized the empire wasn't just criminal, it was ideological. To its followers, it wasn't crime, it was justice. One informant whispered, "Adrian isn't dead. He lives through us, and the system will remember his name." Inside law enforcement, tension grew. Some agents wanted a military-style raid to crush the empire. Alvarez pushed back. "These are kids the system abandoned," she argued. "You crush them, you make them martyrs. You give Adrian more power in death than he ever had in life." But compromise was slipping away. The empire was arming itself. The courthouse date was approaching. February 14th, 2020. Valentine's Day in Millhaven. Families filled downtown. But in the shadows, empire members moved with purpose. Vans rolled toward the courthouse. Inside, Terrence Moore whispered orders. Darnell Harris loaded weapons. Luis Ortega checked comms. Then, everything collapsed. SWAT units, tipped off by Alvarez's informant, intercepted the vans before they reached the courthouse steps. Gunfire erupted in the snowy streets. Chaos spread as terrified bystanders ducked for cover. The empire fought hard, but the system fought harder. When the smoke cleared, Darnell Harris was dead. Luis Ortega was in custody. Terrence Moore fled, vanishing into crowd. The courthouse still stood, but Millhaven would never forget the blood spilled in its shadow. Days later, Alvarez sat across from Luis Ortega in an interrogation room. He was only 22. His eyes burned with conviction. "You think you stopped us?" he sneered. "You can't stop what Adrian built. He showed us the truth. We don't need your system. We'll make our own." Alvarez leaned forward, her voice low. "Adrian wanted justice. You built war. Don't confuse the two." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. Had Adrian's vision been twisted? Or had the system's failures left these kids no choice but to rebel? In the aftermath, the FBI dismantled much of the empire. Dozens of arrests were made. Millions in counterfeit currency seized. Millhaven breathed a sigh of relief, but the scars lingered. Families divided, some praising the empire as freedom fighters, others condemning them as terrorists. For Alvarez, the case closed, but the lesson burned. The empire hadn't grown from greed. It had grown from neglect, from a system that failed its children until they built one of their own. And though the courthouse still stood, the whispers didn't stop. Graffiti still appeared, Adrian lives. And somewhere out there, Terrence Moore, Adrian's closest disciple, was still free. The Hollow Creek murders had been about betrayal, but Adrian's empire was about something larger, a system's failure creating monsters and martyrs in the same breath. Adrian Cole had been just one boy, but his death had sparked a movement that blurred the lines between justice and crime, hope and destruction. The lesson? When systems fail the vulnerable, they don't just disappear. They rise, sometimes in ways that terrify us, sometimes in ways that force us to confront truths we'd rather ignore. And the question that remains, backhand index pointing right, was Adrian's empire truly evil? Or was it simply the mirror of a system that had already broken long before the first match was lit? If you found this story interesting, make sure you subscribe, comment, like, and share for more.